Okay, so phase shift is, again, like I said, it's going to be a horizontal shift of the graph. And we've seen these shifts from all the parent functions that we've been doing in the first semester and into the second a little bit. So to get the phase shift, I'm going to keep this really, really basic, and we're not going to really be using the formula C over B too much because I don't want to get too far into that right away. But what you do is that you look at the graph and you check and see if C is going to be positive or negative, okay? If C is positive, we know that we're going to be going to the left, opposite direction. We've seen this before. And if it is negative, it's going to be going to the right, which is the opposite direction. Usually when you go to the right, you're going positive, negative, etc., etc. So it still works out the same way. And for these examples, the actual B part right here is going to be 1. I've purposely left this out, okay? So in this case, I would have this right here. So I always take a look at this sign, and then I say, okay, well, that's going to go to the right. So I just put a little arrow there, and then I divide basically pi over 2 by 1, which is just going to give me pi over 2 to the right, okay? And I'm just going to figure out these phase shifts first, and then we'll put them on the graph in a moment. And then for this guy, for the phase shift, I notice that this is going to be positive, so I know it's going to be going to the left, okay? And that will be like pi over 6 divided by 1, which is, and I just usually write it like this, the phase shift is pi over 6 to the left. So what I'm going to do is let's put a nice looking graph on here first, and we're just doing out a typical sine wave here, okay? If you hear Winston barking in the background, he's giving the mailman some hell, so I'm sure he'll get bored with that in a minute. At any rate, so there is our sine wave going from just a parent form. And let's do out this one first, okay? So let's look at a shift that is going to be going to the right pi over 2. So what you have to do is that you just take all of the x-intercepts and the peaks and valleys, and we're just going to shift them on over, right? So we go over here, and then this one goes pi over 2 over here, pi over 2 in this direction, and in this direction here, okay? And sadly, this guy's off the graph, womp womp. But I'm going to show you guys also, if you look at this, you can kind of see a pattern, right? Is that we go up, then down, and down. And if we wanted to keep going with this thing, we could maybe put a point like right here, right? And just use patterns to finish the sine wave, though at this point it's kind of like not necessary. But anyhow, that's what the shifted graph would look like should we, do the entire thing out and fill out the entire graph. So if we're going to go to the right, again, going back to the purple graph and shifting it back. So this is going to go here, right? And so that means is that we're taking just all the peaks and valleys and the zeros or x-intercepts and putting them back pi over 6 or 30 degrees. Okay. And it's kind of finishing the process here. Oops. All right. So here we go, finishing this out. And again, if we're using patterns, then this graph could probably go down here somewhere, right? Okay, and just finish things up like that. So, at any rate, that's how you do the phase shift. And it gets a little bit more complicated later on, and once we see the putting it all together videos, it'll make a little bit more sense. So that's how you do that, and let's look at the final kind of like prerequisite video, if you will, the vertical shift.